So let's have a recap of trig equations. The only difference really now is that they might ask us for an answer in radian measure rather than in degrees. So something like this. 2 sine x equals minus root 3. Now traditionally they say between 0 and 360, but it doesn't have to be. But instead now they're saying, hey, no, I want the answer in radians, and so that's between 0 and 2 pi. Well, let's rearrange our sine one, and you're going to see for these ones a lot of exact ratios coming up. This is what I was saying the other day when we talked about converting radians. So root 3 on 2, sine's negative, so we say to ourselves, oh, hang on, which quadrant? Sine's negative in the 3rd and 4th quadrants, so we have to think about, righto, we've got to find the acute angle. The acute angle, root 3 on 2, that's, and as I said to you on Friday, I still think about it in degrees and then convert. For some reason, I can't get my head around just going straight from the exact value to radians, but that's just me, I suppose. So I'd be saying, oh, well, root 3 on 2, that's 60 degrees. 60 degrees is pi on 3. So that's the acute angle. So in quadrant 3, instead of now saying 180 plus the acute angle, I'm saying pi plus the acute angle. And 360 would become 2 pi minus the acute angle. And so we end up with our two answers, 4 pi on 3 and 5 pi on 3. But really, they're the same sorts of questions. So tan squared equals 3. So tan is plus or minus root 3, and once again we get one of those exact values. This time we're in all 4 quadrants because we've got the plus or minus. So we get a nice butterfly, look at that. Anyway, the acute angle, oh, that's also 60 degrees, so that's pi on 3 as well. But now we're in all 4 quadrants. So we get pi on 3, 2 pi on 3, 4 pi on 3, and 5 pi on 3. Then we saw ones like this. So it looks like a quadratic, so we'll move the 2 over. So what multiplies together to give negative 2, adds together to give 1, and that's plus 2 and negative 1. So that gives us either cos x is negative 2 or cos x is 1. And we just do each bit individually. Well, cos x equals negative 2, no answers. Do you remember your cosine curve had a range that went from minus 1 to 1? So it would be impossible to substitute into cos x and get an answer of negative 2. So that's not going to create any answers. Cos x equals 1, well, that is one of our boundary values. So we're at the extremities of the cosine curve. So when did that happen when we were graphing cosine? At 0 and then again at 2 pi. Remember, whenever 0 is an answer, so is 360 or 2 pi. So people often just write down 0 and forget about the 2 pi. So there are only 2 answers for this particular one. Oh yes, that's right. This is one of the ones where we use one of our trig identities so we can create an equation. It's a bit hard with sec and tan. So sec squared, if you remember, is 1 plus tan squared. So 4 sec squared is 4 plus 4 tan squared. Create an equation. Oh, sorry, a quadratic equation. So there's our quadratic. It factorizes. So either tan x is minus a quarter or tan x is 1. And they're both possible. So let's look at minus a quarter first of all. Tan's negative in quadrants 2 and 4. Now in this case, it's not one of our exact values. So I'm going to have to go to the calculator for an approximation. So we won't end up with something pi. I've just done it to 3 decimal places. But 0.245 would be the acute angle. But we still do the same thing. So it's either going to be, well, second quadrant will be pi minus that, and the fourth quadrant will be 2 pi minus that. Remember, pi is 3.14. Don't make the mistake of saying pi is 180. Pi is 180 degrees, but when we're talking about pi here, it still is pi, 3.14159, etc., etc., etc. And so we end up with 2.897 and 6.038. The other one we do have an exact value. That acute angle would be 45 degrees. 45 degrees is pi on 4. So pi on 4 is our acute angle. So in the first quadrant, or the third quadrant, we end up with pi on 4, 5 pi on 4. Putting all four answers together, there we are. So we've got pi on 4, 2.897, 3 pi on 4, and 6.038. Oh, sine 2x. Okay. Well, x is going between 0 and 2 pi. We're looking for answers for 2x, so we're going to go around the circle twice. We're going to look for answers between 0 and 4 pi. First and second quadrant, sine's positive. The acute angle, all right, so sine alpha is 1 on root 2, so that's pi on 4. So 2x, that's the angle we're finding at this stage. First quadrant, it's pi on 4. Second quadrant, it's 3 pi on 4. But we're going around twice, so we'll add 360 degrees, or in this case, 2 pi to each of those. And we get 9 pi on 4 and 11 pi on 4. The last thing we have to do is divide everything by 2. And there's our answers. So pi on 8, 3 pi on 8, 9 pi on 8, and 11 pi on 8. 11h is just trig equations, pretty much the same as what we did before. The only difference, radians instead of degrees. We're using radians instead of degrees.